He fed hungry alien kids every day, not knowing their mother was the ruler of the galaxy. Tyler Grant had never imagined that the end of the world could be this slow. The Blue Plate Diner, tucked away at the edge of Lunar City, had seen better days. Its blue neon sign flickered weakly, barely visible between towering buildings made of shimmering metal and glass. The city, a booming symbol of humanity's expansion into the stars, thrived in a way the small diner never could. Here, nestled between an old repair shop and a supply depot, the diner seemed to have been forgotten by time. Tyler had tried everything to keep it going. He'd invested everything he had, his savings, his dreams, even his dignity into this place. But Lunar City was changing fast. A massive new galactic assembly complex being built on the far side of the moon had drawn all the traffic away from his corner. Now, the city hummed with the constant buzz of high-speed transportation tubes and people hurrying to more important destinations. And Tyler, standing behind a counter filled with empty cups and untouched plates, watched as his diner slipped into obscurity. He wiped his hands on his apron and stared out of the cracked window. Earth hung in the sky, distant and beautiful, just a tiny marble in the vast expanse of black. Tyler couldn't help but feel small in comparison to the universe outside. He had been a chef on Earth once, a rising star they had called him, but after a series of failed ventures, his career had come crashing down. This diner had been his last hope, but now it felt more like a sinking ship, and Tyler wasn't sure how long it would stay afloat. His phone buzzed, a notification about another bill coming due. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Maybe it's time to give it up, he muttered to himself. And then, just as he was about to turn off the lights and lock the door, he heard it. The chime. Tyler froze, staring at the door. At this hour, he didn't expect anyone. The city was practically deserted, but when he looked up, he saw something he didn't expect at all. 3 small figures entered, and Tyler blinked in disbelief. They weren't human. They stood about 4 feet tall, their skin smooth and pale blue, shimmering faintly in the diner's dim light. Their eyes were large, almond-shaped, and completely silver. No pupils, just endless shiny orbs that reflected the neon glow of the diner. Their movements were cautious but graceful as they shuffled through the door, their heads tilting this way, and that as if taking in every detail of their surroundings. Tyler stood frozen for a moment, not sure if his mind was playing tricks on him. He had seen aliens before, of course. Ever since first contact, Earth had become a part of the Galactic Assembly, a loose coalition of species, some friendly, some not so much. But Tyler had never expected one of them to wander into his diner, much less 3 children. His heart raced. What were they doing here? The tallest of the 3 children took a step forward, and as if on cue, her voice, clear but with a strange, melodic quality, echoed through the diner. Her words were translated automatically by a small pendant hanging around her neck. "We have credits," she said, holding up a flat, shiny chip. "We require sustenance." Tyler blinked again. Credits? What kind of credits? Was this some sort of test or a diplomatic visit? He swallowed his surprise and forced a smile. Okay, sure," Tyler said, his voice a little shakier than he would have liked. "I can make you something to eat. What would you like?" The 3 children exchanged quick, silent glances, their large silver eyes flashing with some sort of unspoken communication. The tallest one spoke again, this time more confidently. "We are unfamiliar with Earth cuisine. We require protein and carbohydrates compatible with Saarland physiology." Tyler's head spun. Saarland. He recognized the name from the news broadcasts. They were from an advanced race located near the galactic core, one of the most powerful species in the galaxy. But why were they here? Why were they alone in his diner asking for food? And why did they seem so unfamiliar with everything? He didn't have time to process all of this. What mattered now was feeding them. "Okay, I'll see what I can do," Tyler said, pulling out his tablet. He quickly searched for information on Cerealine dietary needs. After a few moments, he found it. Looks like you can eat most earth proteins and carbs, but you should avoid dairy and nightshades, things like tomatoes and peppers. Otherwise, you're good to go. He glanced back at them, feeling slightly more confident. How about I make you something simple, chicken with rice and some steamed vegetables? The tallest one nodded, her silver eyes locking onto his with an intensity that almost made Tyler forget how to breathe. That is acceptable, she said. The three children moved to a booth in the back of the diner, their movements hesitant but curious. Tyler couldn't help but notice the simple gray jumpsuits they wore, uniforms that looked like they belonged to diplomats or military officers, not children looking for a meal. As he prepared the meal, Tyler couldn't help but watch them. They were silent at first, but gradually they began to explore the diner in their own quiet way. The smallest one, Toss, pointed at the vintage jukebox in the corner. The others leaned in, looking at it with wide eyes, clearly fascinated by something so simple. Tyler chuckled to himself as he worked. It was strange. These children, who were probably centuries ahead of humanity in terms of technology and knowledge, seemed just as fascinated by something as mundane as a jukebox. Finally, Tyler finished their meal, grilled chicken, rice, and steamed vegetables. He carefully arranged the plates, making sure everything looked just right. He had nothing to prove, but for some reason he wanted them to enjoy this meal. It was his way of proving that he still had something left to give. Here you go, Tyler said, setting the plates down in front of the three children. Be careful, it's hot. The children stared at the food, their eyes wide, blinking slowly. The tallest one picked up her fork and hesitated for a moment before taking a bite of the chicken. Her eyes widened in surprise. She made a soft, trilling sound that wasn't translated by her pendant. Is it okay? Tyler asked, worried that maybe he'd made a mistake. She paused for a moment as if searching for the right word. Finally, she looked up at him and said, pleasurable. The texture and flavor are harmonious. Tyler's breath caught in his chest. That was a relief. It was just simple food, but somehow it seemed to have made a big impact on them. The other two children began eating, their caution fatting as they devoured the meal with enthusiasm. Tyler couldn't help but smile. They were just kids after all, and maybe, just maybe, this diner wasn't quite done yet. He turned to them with a grin. I'm Tyler, by the way. What are your names? They exchanged a look, and then the tallest one spoke again. I am Ara, she said. These are my siblings, Mirren and Tasso. Tyler's heart skipped a beat. Ara, Mirren, Tasso. He didn't know it yet, but these three names would soon change the course of his life forever. Little did Tyler know, this was not just an ordinary meal. This was the beginning of a war that would stretch across the stars, a war fought with kindness, empathy, and food. And Tyler Grant was about to find himself on the front lines. The hidden network. The Blue Plate Diner had always been a quiet, unremarkable place. It was the kind of diner that catered to tired workers, families passing through, and the occasional tourist looking for a taste of something simple. It had never been a place where anything extraordinary happened. But that night, as Tyler wiped down the counter and glanced over his empty restaurant, he had no idea that his world was about to shift forever. The three Cerealine children, Ara, Mirren, and Tasso, had left hours ago, after finishing their meal and leaving behind an almost imperceptible tip on the counter. The chime of the door still echoed in Tyler's mind, their silver eyes, wide with wonder, etched into his memory. It wasn't every day that an alien species walked into his diner, let alone ones as extraordinary as them. The next day, when the door chimed again at the same time, Tyler didn't even look up. Business had been slow, and he'd grown accustomed to the occasional customer coming in just before closing. But when he did look up, he froze. There they were again, Ara, Mirren, and Tasso. But this time they weren't alone. 4 more Cerealine children followed them, each with the same pale blue skin and striking silver eyes. Tyler's heart skipped a beat. Why were they back, and who were these new faces? "Welcome back," Tyler said, forcing a smile. He wiped his hands on his apron, suddenly feeling a little more nervous than usual. "I wasn't expecting you again so soon." Ara stepped forward, her movements still cautious but with more confidence than the day before. "We have returned for more sustenance," she said, as her pendant translated her words into perfect English. She gestured to the others. "This is Kren," she added, introducing the new child in the group, a small boy who looked barely older than Tasso. Tyler nodded. "Nice to meet you, Kren," he said. He didn't want to sound too surprised, but the idea of feeding all these kids again made him nervous. "So, the usual meal then." Mirren, who had been unusually quiet, spoke up. "We informed Kren of your food. It is pleasurable." Tyler chuckled, trying to ease the tension. "Well, I'm glad you like it. Sure, I can make the same thing as last time. Chicken with rice and vegetables, right?" But before he could turn to the kitchen, Tasso, the smallest of the group, piped up eagerly. "We want to try something different today," he said, looking up at Tyler with wide eyes. "New food, something else. We want to experience." Tyler blinked in surprise. They want to try something new. He hadn't expected that. For some reason, the idea of these strange, advanced alien kids wanting to sample more human food filled him with pride. It wasn't just that they had come back to his diner. It was that they had enjoyed his cooking. The thought made him feel like a chef again, not just a man trying to keep a failing business afloat. "Well, in that case," Tyler said with a grin, "how about sandwiches? I can make grilled chicken sandwiches with fresh vegetables on bread and maybe a side of soup. Does that sound good?" Ara nodded. "This is acceptable." The children slid into a booth, and as Tyler moved to prepare their meal, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was different this time. These kids were no longer strangers. They were coming back, again and again, as though they'd found something here that they didn't find elsewhere. Something safe. He glanced over at them as they settled in. Tasso and Kren were already playing with the vintage jukebox, their fingers hovering over the buttons, unsure how it worked. Mirren and Ara were deep in conversation, whispering to each other in that silent, unspoken way Tyler had come to recognize. Their eyes would flash, and a decision would be made, a silent agreement between them. It was as though they shared a connection beyond words. Tyler shook his head, marveling at how much he didn't understand about these kids or their world. They had come back to him over and over, and he couldn't help but wonder why. It wasn't like they were getting anything special. They had the credits to pay for the food, but it was hardly anything to write home about. This wasn't a five-star meal. It was just basic, simple human food. As he set to work preparing their lunch, Tyler couldn't help but glance over at them again. It wasn't just the children who were making themselves at home. There was something in their behavior, a kind of quiet confidence, a comfort he hadn't seen in many people who came through the door. But there was also something else, something hidden beneath their eyes that Tyler couldn't quite place. The sound of a chair scraping against the floor broke his thoughts. Mirren had stood up, a strange, distant look in her eyes. Tyler was about to ask her if everything was okay when she suddenly turned toward him. "We must tell you something," she said softly, her voice serious. Tyler froze. "What's going on? Is something wrong?" Mirren exchanged a quick glance with Ara, and then, in a low voice, she spoke again. "We are not just visitors. We are children of the Galactic Assembly. We are sent to observe, to learn about your world." Tyler's mind raced. The Galactic Assembly. He'd heard about it before, about Earth's place in the greater galactic order. But he hadn't known that these kids, who seemed so innocent and curious, were actually representatives of such an important institution. "Observe," Tyler began, his voice trailing off. "What do you mean? What are you really here for?" Ara's voice interrupted, calm but filled with an intensity Tyler wasn't used to. "We are here because our world needs your help. The children of lower-tier Saralan officials, they do not eat. They do not receive proper care. Tyler blinked, trying to process what Ara was saying. You're saying these kids, your friends, aren't being fed properly? Mirren nodded, her expression somber. They survive on basic rations. The resources are allocated according to status, and we are not the highest tier. A cold shiver ran down Tyler's spine. So this wasn't just about food. These kids weren't just hungry, they were part of something much bigger, something that reached beyond the diner, beyond Lunar City. He was caught up in something, whether he wanted to be or not. The door chimed again and Tyler glanced toward it, but this time, it wasn't just more children coming in. Two adults dressed in military-style uniforms walked in. Tyler's heart skipped a beat. They were Saralyn, tall with sharp features and eyes like polished steel. They moved with a precision that felt dangerous. And in that moment, Tyler realized just how much he had unknowingly become a part of something bigger than himself. This was no longer just about feeding a few kids. This was about survival, and if he wasn't careful, he might find himself caught in a war not of weapons, but of power, status, and food. The Galactic Assembly was watching, and now so were the Saralyn. The hidden network. Tyler had always believed the Blue Plate Diner was a place where stories came to an end. People came in, ate, and left, taking their stories with them. But now, the diner felt like a crossroads, a place where stories didn't just end but began to unravel in ways he never could have imagined. The Saralyn children, Ara, Mirren, Tasso, and Kren, had been coming to the diner for days. Each time they brought more friends, more kids who looked just as curious and eager to taste simple human food. Tyler had been happy to feed them, of course, but something in their eyes, the way they looked at him, made him wonder if it was more than just hunger that had brought them here. This particular afternoon, as the sun cast long shadows over Lunar City, Tyler noticed something different about their visit. It wasn't just the 4 children who entered this time. This time, there were 6. As usual, they approached him with quiet curiosity, their large silver eyes glimmering under the fluorescent lights. There was something almost regal about the way they moved, calm, composed, as if they were used to being in control of every situation. Their faces were innocent enough, but there was an undeniable weight behind their presence. "More friends?" Tyler asked, trying to sound casual, though his heart was starting to race. This wasn't just a group of kids anymore. These were the children of high-ranking Saralyn officials, representatives of a civilization far beyond his comprehension. Ara, the tallest of the group, nodded. "Yes, they wish to experience your cuisine as well." She gestured to the new faces. Tyler recognized some of them from previous visits, but others were completely new. There was something different in the way they moved this time, more purposeful. They didn't seem as hesitant as the first group. Their bodies were tense, as though they were preparing for something. "Okay," Tyler said slowly as he led them to a table in the back. "What can I get for you today?" "Same as usual." The group sat down, exchanging silent glances. Tyler could feel the weight of their gaze, as if they were sizing him up, calculating his next move. He was about to offer them the usual meal, chicken with rice and vegetables, when Mirren, who had been silent for most of their visits, spoke up. "We wish to know more," she said, her voice measured and serious. "About your world, about your species." Tyler blinked. "They want to know about Earth," he thought. "Sure," he said cautiously, trying to keep his voice steady. "I can tell you about Earth, about human food, but why now?" Ara leaned forward, her silvery eyes catching the light. "Because we need to understand the others. Those who cannot leave, they need help. You must understand." Tyler frowned, sensing something was off. "What do you mean by others? What's really going on here?" He had never pushed them for answers before, but this time something felt different, urgent even. These children were more than just curious tourists. They were here with a purpose. Mirren hesitated before answering. "The lower-tier children, they are not treated as we are. They live in poor conditions. They are fed only basic sustenance, barely enough to survive, but not enough to thrive. Her voice dropped to a whisper, and Tyler leaned in closer to catch every word. A chill ran down his spine. Wait, so you mean these kids aren't getting enough food? He could hardly believe what he was hearing. How could a species as advanced as the Saralans allow their children to go hungry? Ara looked at him, her silver eyes narrowing slightly. It is not just food, Tyler Grant. It is survival. The Assembly, our leaders, they focus only on the high-ranking officials and their families. The lower-tier children are forgotten. They are considered unimportant, a waste of resources. Tyler felt a wave of anger wash over him. These children, who had been nothing but kind and respectful, were living in conditions he could never have imagined. They were the hidden victims of a society that placed status and power above the needs of its own people. "Why are you telling me this?" Tyler asked, his voice trembling. "Why me?" Mirren's gaze flickered to Ara, who nodded slightly before turning back to Tyler. "Because you can help. You have already helped." She paused, as if considering her next words carefully. "You fed us. You fed the others. You gave them something no one else would." Tyler swallowed, his mind racing. He had just been feeding hungry kids, never imagining that his simple meals would mean so much. "I didn't think it was a big deal. I just made food." "It is more than food, Tyler," Ara said softly. "It is care, compassion, something we do not receive from our own people." Tyler sat back, stunned. For the first time, he realized how much his little diner had become. It wasn't just about serving meals anymore. It was a lifeline, a small, simple act of kindness in a world where the powerful had forgotten how to care for the powerless. As he stared at the group of children around him, a thought struck him. What if I could do more? What if his food, his diner, could be the one place where these forgotten children, these lower-tier Saralans, could find refuge, even if it was only for a little while? But before he could say anything, the door chimed again. This time, Tyler's heart skipped a beat. Two tall Saralan figures stepped inside. They were not children. They were adults, and they were wearing military-style uniforms that Tyler immediately recognized as high-ranking Saralan officials. The children froze, their expressions hardening. Ara quickly stood, her voice low. "You must leave," she said urgently. "The others cannot know." Tyler's mind raced. What was going on? Who were these figures, and why had they come here now? The taller of the two officials spoke, his voice deep and commanding. "You are Tyler Grant?" he asked. "We are here to speak with you." Tyler stood frozen for a moment. This is it, he thought, the moment where everything changes. But before he could respond, Ara stepped forward, her small form standing tall despite the pressure building in the air. "They will not speak," she said firmly. "They are here because of us, and you, Tyler Grant, are caught in the middle." Tyler's pulse raced. The mystery was deepening. And whatever was happening now, whatever was about to unfold, he had no choice but to be a part of it. But there was one thing he was sure of. This was no longer just about food. This was a battle for survival, a battle for the future of these children, and perhaps for the future of all who were caught in the web of the Galactic Assembly. And as Tyler watched Ara stand tall in front of him, he realized he had unknowingly become part of something far bigger than he could have ever imagined. A battle not just for food, but for a better future for the forgotten ones. And that battle, Tyler knew, had only just begun. The hidden truth. The Blue Plate diner was quiet again, just the hum of the ventilation system and the soft clink of Tyler's utensils as he cleaned up. The sudden appearance of the Saralan officials had thrown him off balance, but as they left, he had tried to steady himself. They hadn't said much, just a few words, an air of authority, and a reminder that he was now involved in something far beyond his control. They didn't seem interested in the children, not yet, but Tyler couldn't shake the feeling that they were watching him closely. The Saralan children, Ara, Mirren, Tasso, and Kren, had left with the two officials, their heads down, looking nervous, almost like they had been caught doing something they weren't supposed to. But what could that possibly be? All Tyler had done was feed them. But there was something more to this. He could feel it, something he wasn't being told, and he couldn't shake the suspicion that his diner, a small place that barely made enough to stay open, had somehow become the center of something much larger than him. The next day, just as he was finishing the last of his prep work in the kitchen, the door chimed again. Tyler paused, wiping his hands on his apron, expecting another group of curious children or maybe a lone wanderer from the city. Instead, when he looked up, his heart skipped a beat. Ara and Mirren were back, alone. Tyler opened his mouth to greet them, but something in their expression stopped him. They didn't seem like their usual selves. Ara, usually so composed, looked agitated, and Mirren was uncharacteristically quiet. They both moved toward a corner booth in the back, glancing around nervously as if to make sure no one was watching. Tyler's instincts kicked in. Something was wrong. He set down the knife he had been using and walked over to them. "Everything okay?" he asked softly, trying to keep his voice casual. "Where's Tasso and Kren?" Ara didn't answer right away. She looked over at Mirren, who finally spoke, her voice low. "It's not safe here anymore, Tyler. They're watching us. We weren't supposed to tell you this, but now you need to know." Tyler froze, watching them. Who? He didn't know if he was ready for whatever this was, but he also knew he couldn't ignore it. "Tell me what's going on?" Ara's eyes flickered with a mix of fear and resolve. "You've been feeding us," "Feeding them," she said, gesturing to Mirren and then to the empty space around the diner. "But it's not just the children of diplomats, Tyler. There are others, hidden ones, children who aren't supposed to be seen." Tyler's heart raced. "Hidden ones? What do you mean?" Mirren swallowed hard, her hands trembling slightly. "The lower-tier Saralan children, like us, are part of something much bigger, but the ones you've been feeding, they're the ones who are truly forgotten, cast aside." Ara leaned in, lowering her voice even further. "We're not supposed to talk about them, but now that you've fed them, they'll come for you. They'll come for us all." Tyler's mind was spinning. Everything he thought he knew about these children, their smiles, their hunger, their appreciation for his cooking, was a lie, or at least a small piece of a much larger puzzle. These children were not just running away from home for a meal. They were part of something dark, hidden beneath the surface of the Saralan society. He could see the fear in their eyes now, the same fear that had been present when the officials walked in yesterday. "Who will come for us?" Tyler whispered, almost afraid to ask. Ara sat back, her gaze hardening. "The High Command, the ruling class of the Saralan, they control everything. They decided long ago that we were expendable." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "And if anyone finds out what we've been doing here, we'll all be in danger." Tyler felt a cold sweat form on the back of his neck. This wasn't just about food anymore. The implications were enormous. The Saralan government had a hidden agenda, one that involved children, his children, who weren't just part of a poor social class. They were being hidden away, forgotten, their existence erased for reasons Tyler couldn't yet understand. Ara, noticing his growing confusion, continued. "The lower-tier children have been hidden in warehouses on the edge of Lunar City. They don't get proper care. The officials feed them only the bare minimum to survive, but it's not enough. And the worst part," her eyes narrowed, "they want to keep it that way. They don't care about us. They don't care about what happens to those who don't fit into their precious hierarchy." Tyler's head spun. This was no longer a simple kindness he was extending. His diner had become a lifeline for these forgotten children. He had no idea how deep the web of lies and neglect went. How many others were out there? How many more children were hidden from the world, relying on him to feed them, to care for them in a way that no one else would? Ara sighed, a heavy weight in her eyes. "You're in this now, Tyler. You've become part of our network. And once you're part of it, there's no turning back." Tyler swallowed hard. His simple act of kindness, feeding a few kids, had turned into something that could very well destroy him. But there was no going back now. The situation had spiraled too far. The children needed him, and somehow he needed them. His diner had become the heart of a growing movement, one that had the potential to change everything. Before he could respond, the door chimed again. Tyler turned, his stomach sinking. The Saralin officials had returned. This time it wasn't just two of them. There were more, 5 of them, tall, imposing, and dressed in black military uniforms. Their silver eyes were cold, calculating, scanning the diner for anything out of place. Ara stiffened, her eyes darting to Tyler. "They've found us," she whispered. "It's over." Tyler felt his throat tighten. He hadn't planned on this. He hadn't asked for any of it, but it was happening, and the moment of truth had arrived. The officials stepped forward, their presence filling the room, their eyes fixed on Tyler. They weren't here for a meal. They were here for something much more dangerous. Tyler took a deep breath. This was it. The moment he would either stand up for the children he had come to care for, or let everything he'd worked for crumble in front of him. "Mr. Grant," one of the officials said, his voice sharp like a blade cutting through the tension. "We need to talk." And in that moment, Tyler realized the war he had unwittingly entered was about to take a darker turn. One way or another, his life, and the lives of these children, would never be the same. The price of compassion. The air inside the Blue Plate diner felt heavier than usual. Tyler couldn't shake the feeling that he was caught in the middle of something that he couldn't escape, no matter how hard he tried. The Saralin officials, tall, imposing with their sharp silver eyes and military precision, stood in front of him, filling the small space with a quiet but palpable tension. They weren't here to eat. They weren't here for a friendly chat. Tyler could feel it in his bones. Ara, Mirren, and the other children sat still in the corner, their heads down, their hands folded in their laps, almost like they were waiting for something to happen. Waiting for Tyler to decide whether he was going to fight, run, or submit. The leader of the group, a tall Saralin officer with dark blue iridescent patterns flashing across his skin, stepped forward. "Tyler Grant," he said, his voice cold and formal. "You are feeding children who do not belong to you. You are involved in a matter far beyond your understanding." Tyler stood still, fighting the urge to shrink back. "I'm feeding kids who are hungry," he said firmly, trying to keep his voice steady. "They've come to me for food and I've given it to them. What's the problem?" The officer's gaze hardened. "The problem, Mr. Grant, is that you are interfering with matters that are not your concern. These children are not your responsibility. They belong to us, to the Saralin leadership. You have unknowingly become part of a network that threatens the stability of our social order." Tyler clenched his fists, his mind racing. A network. He had been running a diner, feeding a group of kids who showed up at his door asking for food. They had seemed like ordinary children, but now Tyler was starting to realize that there was nothing ordinary about this situation. The deeper he got into it, the more he understood that these children weren't just running away from their families. They were running from an entire system, one that was now clearly ready to strike back. "I didn't ask for any of this," Tyler said, his voice quieter now, but there was a firmness in it. "I'm just a cook. I feed people who are hungry." Ara's voice broke through the tense silence. "You are helping us, Tyler. You've done more for us than our own leaders ever have. You've given us something no one else would. But now," she faltered, her eyes flicking nervously to the Saralin officials, "now we're in danger, and so are you." The officer in charge sneered, clearly unconcerned by Ara's words. "Danger? You've overestimated your position. This is not a matter of danger, child. This is a matter of control. You have broken the rules and now you must face the consequences." Tyler swallowed hard. He had no idea how far this was going to go, but one thing was clear. He had to decide what he was going to do next. He could either back down and let these officials take the children away, or he could stand up for them. He wasn't sure what the right choice was, but deep down, he knew one thing. If he let these kids go back to the lives they had escaped from, it would haunt him forever. "What do you want?" Tyler asked, his voice thick with a mix of fear and defiance. The officer's lips curled into a cold smile. "We want you to stop interfering with Saralyn matters. We want you to turn over all the children who have come to you. Your involvement in this network will end today, Mr. Grant." Tyler's hands were shaking now, but he clenched his fists tighter, trying to steady himself. "I can't do that," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "These kids came to me for help. They need me. They need food. You can't just send them back to be forgotten." The officer stepped closer, his gaze sharp and calculating. "You misunderstand, Tyler Grant. You are not in a position to make decisions. The children belong to the state, to Saralyn authority. They are not your responsibility. And as for you," his eyes narrowed, "you will be dealt with." Tyler felt a chill run down his spine. He could sense the gravity of what was happening. The situation had just escalated from a simple misunderstanding to something that could ruin him. If he didn't comply, there would be consequences. He didn't know what those consequences were, but he was sure they wouldn't be pleasant. "I'm not just going to hand them over," Tyler said, his voice steady but filled with a quiet resolve. "These children deserve better than what you've given them. I can't be a part of that. I won't be." Ara stood up from her seat, her voice trembling but filled with determination. "Tyler, you don't understand. They're not just watching you anymore. They're monitoring you. The authorities already know about the food you've been giving us. We're being tracked. You're being tracked. And if we don't stop this now, if we don't leave, you'll be dragged into something much worse than you can imagine." Tyler felt the weight of her words and his mind raced. What had he gotten himself into? He'd only been trying to do something good, feed a few hungry kids, give them a safe space. Now it seemed like he had stumbled into the middle of a political nightmare. A nightmare that could tear apart not just his diner, but everything he had worked for. The officer turned to his subordinates, giving them a silent order. They began to move toward the children, their expressions impassive, as though they were preparing to do something far worse than simply take them away. Tyler could feel the tension building to a breaking point. But before they could make another move, a voice cut through the silence. "Enough." Tyler turned toward the voice, his heart pounding. Standing in the doorway of the diner was someone he never expected to see, Supreme Counselor Viseria, the leader of the Saralyn Concordat. She was tall, commanding, and her blue skin shimmered with an iridescent glow, but it was her presence that filled the room. She was powerful, authoritative, and now, it seemed, she was about to decide Tyler's fate. Her eyes scanned the room, taking in the situation with a cold, calculating gaze. The Saralyn officials around her stood at attention, but they did not challenge her. "Viseria," Tyler said, his voice filled with surprise. "What's happening? Why are they doing this?" The Supreme Counselor's gaze softened just for a moment as her silver eyes met his. "It is not your fault, Tyler Grant," she said quietly. "You have fed the children. You have shown them compassion. But now you must understand something more important than food. You must understand that these children are pawns in a larger game. They are caught between our laws and your compassion. And if you continue to stand in the way of our authority—" She let the sentence hang in the air, her gaze piercing. Tyler felt the weight of her words like a physical force. This wasn't just about food anymore. This was a battle for control, a battle between the system and the simple act of kindness. "I'm not going to let you send them back to a life of neglect," Tyler said, his voice growing steadier with each word. Viseria took a slow step forward. "You don't have a choice, Tyler," she said softly. "You've crossed a line, and now the consequences are far greater than you can understand." Tyler swallowed hard, but he wasn't backing down. Not now, not when the stakes had become so high. "Then I'll fight," he said, his voice firm. Viseria nodded, her expression unreadable. "So be it. But understand this, you are no longer just a cook, Tyler Grant. You are now part of a conflict that stretches across the galaxy, and there will be no easy way out." Tyler felt his heart race. A conflict that stretches across the galaxy. How had things escalated so quickly? But in that moment, he knew one thing for sure. There was no going back. The choices he made from here on out would change everything, both for the children and for him. And whatever came next, he was going to face it head-on. "Let's see how this plays out then," Tyler said. And for the first time, he realized that his fight had just begun. The galactic crossroads. The air in the diner had grown thick with tension, the kind that hangs in the room right before something monumental happens. Tyler stood frozen, facing the towering figures of the Cerulean officials and their leader, Supreme Counselor Viseria, who had just made it clear that his involvement in this situation had crossed a line. The door to the blue plate was now closed, but the weight of the galaxy itself seemed to be pressing down on the small, dusty diner. Viseria had remained quiet for a long moment after Tyler's words. Her silver eyes flickered as she studied him, her expression a mix of admiration and cold calculation. The others in the diner, Mirren, Ara, Tasso, and the other children, watched anxiously, clearly aware that the stakes were higher than they'd ever been before. Tyler felt the world spinning around him. It wasn't just about food anymore. It wasn't about running a failing diner or serving hungry kids. It was about something far larger, a conflict that extended beyond the moon, beyond humanity, and perhaps beyond the very laws that govern the stars. "You've caused quite a stir, Tyler Grant," Viseria finally spoke, her voice calm, almost soothing, but with an underlying edge of power that made Tyler's skin prickle. "What began as a simple kindness has grown into a matter of galactic interest. Do you understand the magnitude of this?" Tyler swallowed hard but nodded. He could feel his palms sweating, his heart racing. "I didn't ask for this," he said, the words coming out more as a confession than an explanation. "I'm just trying to help these kids. They were hungry. They've been living in terrible conditions." Viseria regarded him for a long moment, her iridescent patterns shifting in the dim light as she stepped closer, her presence overwhelming. "You did not ask for this," she agreed, "but you are in the position to make a choice now. A choice that will shape not just your life, but the future of intergalactic diplomacy. This is not a matter of hunger, Mr. Grant. It is a matter of power, authority, and the system we have built for millennia." Tyler felt his throat tighten. He had no idea what she was talking about, but it sounded far too important for a simple diner owner to understand. Yet here he was, caught in the middle of a galactic power struggle that could change everything. Was he supposed to fight? Walk away? Let them take the children and let it all be someone else's problem? He shook his head, frustrated. "You can't just make these kids disappear," he said, his voice rising with emotion. "They're real people. They deserve better than this. They've been ignored by your system, and now they're asking for something as basic as a meal. Why is that such a problem?" Viseria's eyes softened for the briefest of moments, and Tyler thought he saw a flicker of something like regret behind the cold, calculating exterior. But it was gone almost as soon as it appeared. "It is not the children who are the problem, Tyler Grant. It is the system that governs them. The Cerulean hierarchy has existed for millennia, and it cannot simply be undone by a single act of kindness. Your food, your actions, have threatened that system. And now, I must decide how to handle this threat." Tyler's mind raced. He didn't want to be part of some political game. He just wanted to feed the children who had come to him. But what he didn't know, what he couldn't have understood, was that his diner had become a battleground. He wasn't just serving food anymore. He was serving as the symbol of something much larger, the growing tension between compassion and power, between the well-being of individuals and the rules of an entire society. "I didn't sign up for this," Tyler muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "I'm just a cook." Viseria's eyes locked onto his, piercing through him like a laser. "You are more than just a cook now, Tyler Grant. You are a representative of something the Cerulean leadership has overlooked for too long, empathy, and it has made you dangerous." Tyler took a deep breath, feeling like he was being swept into something he couldn't control. But despite everything, despite the overwhelming fear and uncertainty, he couldn't back down now. He'd fed these kids. He'd given them something no one else had. And no matter the consequences, he wasn't going to let them be taken away without a fight. "You think I'm dangerous," Tyler said, meeting her gaze with newfound determination. "Then you're right, because I'm not letting you take these kids back to a life where they don't matter. If you think that's a threat to your system, then maybe your system needs to change." Viseria remained silent for a long moment, her silver eyes watching him with an intensity that felt like she was measuring every word he said. The tension in the diner was unbearable, each second dragging on as if the entire fate of the galaxy rested in this moment. Then, to Tyler's surprise, Viseria stepped back, her expression unreadable. She raised a hand, signaling for the officials behind her to remain still. "Perhaps," she began, her voice cool, "there is something to be learned from this moment of human compassion. You are correct, Tyler Grant. These children, all of them, deserve more than what we have given them. They deserve more than a system that disregards their well-being." Tyler blinked, unsure of where she was going with this. "So you're going to let them stay?" he asked, a glimmer of hope rising in his chest. Viseria paused before answering. "Not quite," she said, "but I will offer you a choice." Tyler's heart thudded painfully in his chest. "A choice?" he echoed, his voice filled with suspicion. Viseria's gaze hardened once more. "Yes, the choice to become a part of something bigger, a part of a new initiative that can change the fate of not just these children, but all Cerulean dependents who have been hidden away, forgotten by the very system that should have protected them." Tyler stared at her, bewildered. What kind of initiative? The Supreme Counselor took another step forward, her voice dropping to a quiet, almost conspiratorial tone. "The Galactic Assembly is facing a growing debate. Many factions believe humanity is too young, too reckless to play a true role in galactic affairs. But your actions, your simple act of kindness, have demonstrated something rare. Something that even the oldest, most advanced species struggle to grasp: the value of empathy across species boundaries." Tyler's confusion deepened. "What does that have to do with me, with these kids?" "You have shown the galaxy something it sorely lacks," Viseria said, her voice growing more resolute. "An example of true interspecies compassion. You have done more for these children than the entire Cerulean leadership has in years. And now, I offer you a chance to expand that reach, to make a real change, not just for Cerulean children, but for countless others who have been cast aside." Tyler's head was spinning. A part of him wanted to run, to throw his apron down and walk away from it all. But another part of him, the part that had been fed up with the system, the part that had wanted to make a difference, suddenly realized that this could be the opportunity of a lifetime. "Are you saying you want me to help lead this?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Viseria's gaze softened just enough to make Tyler's heart skip a beat. "Yes, Tyler Grant. I want you to help lead a new initiative that could transform the way we think about care, compassion, and the value of all children, regardless of species or social status. But you will need to make a choice. It will come with great responsibility. The question is, are you ready to take that responsibility on?" Tyler stood there, the weight of her words settling in his chest. For a moment, all he could hear was the steady beat of his own heart. Then, with a deep breath, he nodded. "Yes, I'm ready." And just like that, Tyler Grant, the cook who had wanted nothing more than to run a small diner on the moon, became a symbol of something greater, something that could change the galaxy itself. The ripple across the stars. The moment Tyler agreed to Viseria's offer, the world around him seemed to shift. The quiet hum of the diner, the clang of dishes being washed, the soft chime of the door opening, everything felt distant, as if the universe had just stretched open before him, revealing a path he had never imagined walking. It wasn't just about food anymore. The kids, the Cerulean children, had made it clear that his actions, his simple act of serving meals to the forgotten children of their world, had ignited something much larger than him. And now, in this small diner on the moon, Tyler Grant had been handed the opportunity to play a part in reshaping an entire intergalactic society. Viseria's eyes, usually cold and calculating, now held something softer as she watched him process his decision. There was an intensity in her gaze, as though she had been waiting for this moment for a long time. For the first time since she entered the diner, there was a flicker of approval in her posture. "You've made the right choice, Tyler," she said, her voice calm but with an underlying strength. "Now the real work begins." The air in the diner seemed to crackle with anticipation as the children gathered around him, their eyes wide with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. Mirren, Ara, and Tasso stood closest to him, their faces glowing with something Tyler couldn't quite define. Relief, perhaps, or maybe something more profound. Kren, the youngest, looked up at Tyler with an intensity that matched Viseria's own. For a moment, Tyler felt the weight of the responsibility that had just fallen on him. It wasn't just about feeding them anymore. It was about leading them, guiding them, perhaps even changing their future. He had stepped into a world far beyond his understanding, a world where decisions were made by powerful leaders, where ancient traditions collided with the possibility of change. And he, a simple cook from Earth, had somehow become part of that equation. Viseria motioned for one of the officials to step forward. The officer, who had stood silently in the background until now, approached and handed Tyler a small, translucent crystal. It glowed faintly in the low light of the diner, its surface etched with intricate patterns that Tyler didn't recognize. It felt warm to the touch, almost alive. "This," Viseria said, her voice steady, "is a communication crystal. It is connected to the Galactic Assembly. It will allow you to send and receive messages directly from the highest levels of government. You will be given access to information, decisions, and strategies that affect not only Cerulean society but the future of the entire galaxy." Tyler stared at the crystal, the weight of its significance sinking in. "I'm just a cook. I don't know anything about politics, about all of this." He gestured vaguely around the diner, as though the very walls of the place were suddenly too small for the scale of the world he was now thrust into. Viseria's expression softened just a fraction, but her gaze remained unwavering. "That's exactly why you're here, Tyler. You have no allegiance to the systems of power, no loyalty to the status quo. You have shown that you are capable of seeing beyond what is and imagining what could be. That is something rare in this galaxy." Tyler felt his hands tighten around the crystal. "But I don't know where to start. How can I help make a difference if I don't even understand the game?" "You start by continuing what you've already done," Viseria said, her voice taking on a new, quieter tone. "You have already made a significant impact, not just for these children, but for many others who have been forgotten by their societies. You've created a ripple, Tyler, a ripple that can spread across the galaxy if you choose to let it." Tyler took a deep breath, his eyes flicking to the children around him. Their faces, once filled with uncertainty, were now filled with a kind of quiet trust. They had come to him for food, but now they were looking to him for something more, for leadership, for a future where they wouldn't have to hide in the shadows, where their lives wouldn't be decided by the power of a distant, uncaring system. Tyler looked back at Viseria, his mind clearer than it had been in weeks. "What do you want me to do?" Viseria smiled, a rare gesture, but it was filled with the weight of centuries of Cerulean tradition. "You will take this message back to Earth. You will begin with the humans, with their capacity for empathy. You will show the galaxy that compassion transcends species, that leadership does not come from power alone but from understanding. You will start with the children. They are the future. And if they can learn to care for one another, to see the value in every life, then perhaps the rest of the galaxy will follow." Tyler nodded slowly. The task before him was enormous, but it no longer felt like something he could avoid. These children had trusted him, and now he was being asked to help them, and countless others, build a better future. "Where do I begin?" Tyler asked, his voice steady now, the uncertainty beginning to fade. Viseria stepped closer, her presence still commanding. You will start by working with the Saralan leaders. We will begin the process of integrating Earth's compassion model into Saralan society. This is not just a political act, it is a cultural revolution, and you will be at the center of it. You will use your position as an outsider to challenge everything the Saralans hold dear and show them that there is more to life than hierarchy. Tyler looked at the children, then back at Viseria. And what about the children I've been feeding? What happens to them now? They will be the first to benefit from this change, Viseria said. They will become leaders in their own right, showing others that empathy and compassion are not weaknesses but strengths. You will guide them. You will show them that they are worth more than their status, more than their birthright. You will teach them that they can change the world. Tyler felt the weight of those words settle in his chest. Change the world. It sounded impossible. But then again, so did feeding a group of alien kids in a failing diner. And yet, here he was. For the first time in a long time, Tyler felt like he was standing at the beginning of something monumental, something that had the potential to reshape not just his life, but the lives of thousands, maybe millions, across the galaxy. The door chimed once more, and Tyler turned to see more children entering the diner. They were Saralan too, but these were the younger ones, barely old enough to walk. They held out their hands, looking to Tyler for food, for comfort, for care. And Tyler, standing behind the counter, knew exactly what he had to do. He smiled. "Welcome," he said, his voice steady. "You're just in time. I've got a new recipe to try." And just like that, the Blue Plate Diner, once a small, forgotten corner of Lunar City, became the beginning of a new future. A future where compassion mattered, where empathy was the guiding principle, and where every child, no matter where they came from, was valued. The ripple had begun, and Tyler Grant, the cook, was now at the heart of something much bigger than himself. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon for more amazing videos.